ביאור משנה זין, look at the big introduction because it talks about your case. כבר הזכרנו, we already mentioned, שעירובי חצרות מערבים בפת. When you make an eruv for the courtyard, for the houses in the shared courtyard, you need to do with bread. והיינו, which means, שקובים כיכר מכל בית ובית. I'm going to take bread from each and every house. Usually you do it with matzah, because it doesn't get rotten. ומניחים את כל הכיכרות באחד מבתי החצר בכלי אחד. And you leave all these breads in one of the houses in one vessel. ויש כותבים, there are those who says, look, it's not, you can't take bread, the bread is going to become moldy after 2 days. That's why I suggested to make it with matzah, so it doesn't become moldy. But they didn't have matzah at those times, so what did they used to do? So יש כותבים שנהגו לגבות מעט קמח מכל בית. So it's easier to take a little bit of flour from every house, ועושים אותו חלה אחת, and you can make it into one bread, so that for sure everybody has it. It's not separated. או גברם, בת, בית שמניחים בו את העירוב, אינו צריך ליתן פת לעירוב. An interesting case. So you've got 5 people, right? And they all say, oh, we're going to give it to this guy. So you're only going to have in that guy's house 4 breads. You don't need 5. He doesn't need the bread. He doesn't need it. So they need to say, your house is ours.
Because he's mevutal. Why he doesn't need?
Because they're saying,
nullified?
No, they're saying our dwelling place is in your house. When they give him the bread, so he doesn't need to say my dwelling place is in my house. Because his dwelling there is in his house. But they need to say, oh, we're going to, this is where we actually eat. Even though they're faking, they don't actually eat there. But they say, it's like fakery, we actually eat by you. That's what they're saying. Okay? ברעם, בית שמניחים בו את העירוב, אינו צריך ליתן פת לעירוב. At that house you don't need to give a bread. שהרי בעליו דרים שם ממש, because it's not fakery. That's the true thing, he actually lives there. והם שותפים לכולם בדירתם. And they are actually saying, it's like we're living there. Now that's what they're saying. But here comes the question. What happens? It usually happened a lot at that time. The father would live in one house, and then his first son will get married, he will build another house, the second son gets married, another house, the third house get married, but these guys, all these married sons that are getting married, they don't have their own business. They all work for the father. In other words, he's the one who's supplying the bread.
Wow.
He is the one who's supplying the bread. The question you
can look at it like he's the one that supplied the bread, but he supplied them the money. They buy the bread.
You're thinking now. Think about in the old time. What used to happen? You used to work on the farm. The farm belongs to whom? To the father. That's it. You work for the father. Yeah. So the question is now: do they need to make an eruv? Because anyway, the bread comes from him. Let's continue. אנשי חצר שהיו כולם אוכלים על שולחן אחד. They all used to eat at the father's place. Now, what do you mean eat on his father על שולחן אחד? אף על פי שכל אחד ואחד יש לו בית בפני עצמו, even though each and every one has a house on his own, אין צריכם עירוב. They don't need an עירוב. מפני שהם כאנשי בית אחד. They're just like one house. וכשם שאין אשתו של אדם ובני ביתו ועבדיו אוסרים עליו, and just like your wife, even though she lives down the zero, and another wife down here, and your son lives over there, it's another room, let's say, for example, they don't prohibit the courtyard on you, ואינו צריך לערב עמהם, you don't make an eruv with your wife or your sons, כך אלו כאנשי בית אחד הם, מפני שהם כולם סומכים על שולחן אחד. They are all supported by one table, so they don't need an eruv. They all combine with one eruv.
Because they eat there anyway.
Oh, there's going to be a question. What happens if they don't eat them?
Then you need it.
We're going to get at that. וכן, אם הוצרכו לעשות עירוב עם אנשי חצר אחרת, now, in that...
neighbors.
Yeah, it's one courtyard. You have 3 houses that belong to this family over here, and 3 houses that belong to family over here. How many people need to give breads now? to share the courtyard? Is it just the two household, the main guy, or everybody needs to give bread? That's the question. וכן אם יצטרכו לעשות עירוב עם אנשי חצר אחרת, and now if they need to make an עירוב with another courtyard, עירוב אחד לכולם, one עירוב for everybody, ופת אחת בלבד, מוליכים אותו לאותו מקום שווים עמו. In other words, these all three guys are considered to be one person. It's just like one house with three rooms. Okay. That's what you consider it. It's one house with three rooms. Okay. ואם היה עירוב בה אצלם, what happened if the עירוב used to come to them? So now they don't need at all. ואם היה עירוב בה אצלם, אינם צריכים לערב. כמו הבית שמניחים בו את העירוב. So now, even though there's 5 houses over here, they all belong to the same guy, to the household, whoever the boss is, and now all the other people that share the courtyard give him bread, and all these guys don't need to give bread, because his house are all one. שאינו צריך ליתן את הפת, שכל אלו הבתים כבית אחד הם חשובים. All these houses are considered to be like one house. וכן אנשי חצר שירבו, נעשו כולם כבית אחד. And also one courtyard that made together, they all become one. So in other words, if this courtyard wants to make an Eruv with this courtyard, not every house needs to be. Since they already have an Eruv, so they only need one bread with one bread. That's right. ואם יצטרכו לערב עם חצר שנייה, כיכר אחד בלבד מולכים בשביל כולם למקום שמערבים בו. You only need one bread from one courtyard to another courtyard. ואם היה עירוב בה אצלם, and if the עירוב come to you, then you don't need you only need the one bread that comes from the other courtyard, and that's it. You don't need two. אינם צריכים לתת פת at all. Okay. משנתנו, our Mishnah, is going to deal with a specific situation. דנה באחים הדרים בחצר אחת. Talks about 2 brothers live in one courtyard. כל אחד בבית בפני עצמו, everyone in his house on his own, but they're not really brothers. I mean, they're not really independent. They eat in their own house, with their own family, with their own sons. But you know where's the money coming from?
From their father.
From their father. So the father is here, he's the owner of the business. These 2 brothers live on the property, but the question is now, they don't only eat really on the table of the father. They do. It's his money. But they eat in their house, So the question now, do they need an Eruv? Since we know that in actuality they're eating the father's bread, but they're not eating it in the father's house. But he's going to say, you know what, the houses that you are, you built it well. You built it on my property. It's still my house. Or you don't. Or you say, now they're independent. That's our question. Okay. אלא שמקבלים הם פרנסתם מאביהם. They get the sustenance from their father. הדר עמהם באותו חצר. And he needs to be in the same courtyard. If they're in a different courtyard completely, then it's not a problem. Then for sure they need to give. Right. But over here, you're not sure it's their house really. Is it their house? It's not their house. It's like, I'm not quite sure what's going on over here. כיצד הם מערבים? So these 2 brothers, how do they make an Eruv? Let's see. האחים השותפים. Brothers who are partners. By the way, you don't have to say partners. Rashi doesn't even have the word partners. Brothers. Okay. שהיו אוכלים על שולחן אביהם. They used to eat on the bread on the table of their father. I don't think it literally means to eat. It's an expression. They used to get the sustenance from their father. וישנים בבתיהם. But they used to sleep in their houses. שיש לכל אחד באותה חצר. That has each and every one of them in that courtyard, שדר באביהם בית מיוחד בשבילו. They have a specific house for himself. ויש בחצר זו גם דרים אחרים. In that courtyard, there's other people, other families. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara it explains, שאין כוונת משנתנו שהיו אוכלים ממש בית אביהם. We don't mean that they actually had to eat in the father's house. אלא שהיו מקבלים מזונותיהם מאביהם. It means that he used to, between me and you, he used to give them the money for food. אבל כל אחד ואחד אוכל לעצמו בביתו. But each one eats in his house with his own family. ויש גוסים השותפים. There are those who say that they are partners, ומפרשים. So it doesn't have to be brothers. They can either be, also be partners. או השותפים שהיו אוכלים על שולחן אחד. Or partners that used to eat on the same table. כלומר, again, it doesn't necessarily mean on the same table. From the same business. They eat from the same business.
There is two definition here.
Yeah. כלומר, דיירים שהיו מקבלים פרנסתם מאחד מבני החצר בשכר עבודתם שעבדו אצלו. אבל כל אחד אוכל בביתו. In other words, there's a big boss and they're under him. צריכים עירוב לכל אחד ואחד. It says in that case, we're going to look at them as independent already. We're not going to look at it that he is like the children. They're not children, they're already
grown up.
Grown up, let's call them, yeah. הואיל וכל אחד מהם הוא דייר לעצמו. Because each one has his own place. And by the way, you can see it psychologically. In your house, to go into Nadav's room, let's take Nadav in your house. It's Nadav's room?
Of course.
It's
my room.
In your house, it's not Nadav's room, it's my room. I let him sleep there.
Okay.
But if Nadav had a wife and he built a house down a little bit on the corner, yeah, you're not just going to walk in and say and think, this is mine. This is exactly what he says. This is the grown-up stage, like it says. Okay. הואיל וכל אחד מהם הוא דייר לעצמו, כשבאים לערב עם דיירי החצר, when you come to make an eruv with the other members of the courtyard, צריך כל אחד ואחד, each and every one of them needs to give, לתת פת לשם העירוב, to give bread for the עירוב. לפיכך, אם שכח אחד מהם, so let's say one of these brothers forgot to make an עירוב, ולא יירב, ולא ישתתף בעירוב, what does he need to do? מבטל את רשותו, he says, I give up my domain, צריך הוא לבטל את רשותו לשאר הדיירים, שלא לאסר עליהם. In order not to prohibit on them. And here comes the strange part. מתי? When does it need to be? צריכים האחים או השותפים עירוב לכל אחד ואחד. When do they need to make this עירוב, each and every one? בזמן שמלוכים עירובן במקום אחר. It's when is it? It's when they give the bread to somebody else. Not to the father. Not to the father. If they give the bread to somebody else, everybody needs to give. כי בזמן שמוליכים עירובם במקום אחר, שמניחים את העירוב בביתו של אחד משאר בני החצר, from one of the other people of the courtyard, not that family, שהואיל והוזקקו לעירוב, because since they need an עירוב, ושאר הדיירים אוסרים עליהם, and all the other people in the courtyard prohibit for them to take to the courtyard, אף הם אוסרים על דיירי חצר אחרים. They also prohibit on the other people. וצריך כל אחד מהם ייתן חלק לעירובו. אבל אם היה עירוב באצלן, but if the עירוב was in that person that forgot, yeah? שכל דיירי החצר היו מניחים את העירוב בבית אביהם, או בביתו של אדם ששותפים כלים ממנו פרנסתם, but if all those other people from the courtyard used to give the bread into their father's house, then these guys forgot, don't worry about it. They're under him in a way. Yeah? אינם צריכים לערב, they don't need to make an עירוב. הואיל והאחים נוטלים מזונותיהם מבית אביהם, because these three are one עירוב together. The only problem is that they're going to prohibit on the other guys. But once the other guys give to the father, now it becomes one עירוב again. או השותפים מבת ופרסם, this is either with brothers or partners, לפיכך אינם צריכים להשתתף בו, that's why they don't need to make an עירוב, שהרי בית שמניחים בו את העירוב, because the house that you put the עירוב in it, אינו צריך לתן פת לעירוב, doesn't need to give bread, like we explained in the previous Mishnah. וכן אם אין דיירים אחרים בחצר, and also if there's no other people living in that courtyard, it's only that family who share this courtyard, הרי החצר כולה כרשות אחד, then they know not each one obviously has to give, because they're all under the father. כשדאחד, מאחר שפת המשותפת לו כל האחים בבית אביהם, because all the sustenance comes from one source. There's one bread in the father's house that belongs to all of them. לכל הדיירים משותפים מבית מפרנסם. Okay. This is the house who gives the money.
So there is two aspects here. There is the aspect as where you eat, and then the aspect who gives you the parnasa.
Who gives you the bread?
If you get the substance, then that means like you are sharing there, because you get the money from there, then you don't need the eruv. Or if you eat there.
Yeah.
Is that true or no?
Yeah.
I understood it right?
Yeah, exactly. But think about it like this. Don't think money. Think bread. Where does your bread come from?
Yeah, they share the bread.
Oh, where does your bread come from?
Right.
Exactly. Don't think money.
Or if they really eat in that house. What if that's what I understood in the beginning.
Even if they eat in their house.
No. Oh, even if they eat in
Even
their
if
house.
they
They
bread,
don't have to eat in their father's house.
that's right. The bread that they're eating, whose bread are they eating?
כן, זה כבר
They're eating the brothers. They're eating the father's eruv. They're eating the father's bread.
So now you got a different case. What if the father really doesn't give them the money, but everybody eat on one table? In other words, this brother...
Then there are guests in his house. There are guests in his house then. It's not a problem.
Huh?
There are guests in his house.
They don't need eruv.
They don't need
But
eruv.
every time they eat there.
Yeah, they're guests in his house. They're always guests.
Then they don't need the eruv either.
Okay, they're guests. Yeah.
מעניין.
But actually, I'm not sure what you said.
Why?
Wait. The question is, what happens if they have their own money?
Right.
They always eat in the father's place, but their property is on the father's property.
Right. On the father's property.
I don't
of
know.
course. It's his property.
If it's his property, I don't know what the case is. It's an interesting fact. But no.
It's like an eruv. They make it's like an eruv because what you do in eruv, you say I'm going to eat there.
Yeah, but there's also an idea of where your dwelling place is your courtyard, where you live, where you sleep, it is yours. And it's like you rent. There's no difference between you living in that house or somebody else. If somebody else rented your house,
Right.
not your son,
Right.
rented that house, and even though he ate in your table, you will still stay. He will need to make an eruv, that guy.
Because it's considered his.
It's considered his house. So maybe the son also...
Because it's considered their house already.
Yeah, it's like renting. I don't know. It's a good question. I can see both ways.
Okay.
I can see both ways. Yeah, interesting question.